well as occupations through the CIDB Act. So we are provided for existence in the Constitution. Now, in terms of the Act, I'll just summarize our legislative mandate. The important thing for us is to provide leadership to the construction industry. We are sometimes drawn on day-to-day issues, which we try and help, but we always emphasize that it's strategic leadership. Sometimes you get a contractor who's been hijacked by subcontractors on site, and they phone us. So we do engage on such things, but it's not really our daily bread. The second one is to really make sure that the emerging sector in the industry becomes part of the established sector, which is also part of transformation. The other one is to make sure that we improve the performance and best practice of the industry. You know, people must be able to finish projects in time with the required quality and professionalism. The other one is uniform application of policy. People sometimes explain policy differently. What we have asked people is that you must not ask from other people, but must come to CIDB if they want to understand what the policy says. Now, one of our key mandates, because two key mandates are development as well as regulation, monitoring and regulation. So the other one, the last one, is really monitoring and regulation. And we do that through the registration of projects as well as registration of monitoring and regulation. So the other one, now in terms of our strategic outcome orientated goals, we've got 5 of them. We want to be an inclusive, growing construction industry. We also want to be innovative in what we do, especially under COVID-19 environment. We also work in alliance. We do not have enough money as well as people to do everything in-house. So we work in alliance with other organizations to achieve our objective. And also we want to be a reputable regulator, which is fair, transparent, which people can rely on. Now that cannot happen unless there is sound corporate governance. So sound corporate governance is what we pride ourselves in. Now we have various programs which actually enhance our strategy. Program 1 is administration, which is underpinned by sound corporate governance. Program 2, regulation and advocacy, which is being a reputable regulator. Program 3, being innovative and thriving construction environment. And Program 4, which is inclusive, growing construction industry. Now we have audited results. We have audited our various programs. And as you see, we achieved 21 out of 27 targets, which is an overall achievement of 77%. We always target 80% as our minimum performance. The issues which really contributed a lot in terms of those targets which were not achieved. One, at the end of 2019, we implemented an ERP system so that we can improve ourselves, and we commissioned in December. So the first quarter really it was a and we experienced a lot of problems and backlogs, but it is now stable. The other one also, it was the beginning of COVID. Some of the targets were accumulative targets, which needed calculation after year end. So in fact, those targets then have been calculated after March, and then we experienced some problems with those targets. And sometimes those targets were supposed to be calculated by the clients. They also experienced some problems. Now, I won't go into lots of details in terms of the strategic objectives and the targets. I will just quickly say that we achieved it or not. I will start with those which were achieved. So under administration, we have a target of revenue because we are partly funding ourselves, and on the other side, we also get an allocation from the department. And our view is that we must try and create our revenue, which we usually create by the registration process. We achieved that target. And the other one also is ICT, because it's very important in our operations. We achieve that target. Compliance with the legislative requirements, especially the supply chain one, we achieved it well. And also paying within 30 days, we achieved that target. Now, the other one is the audit processes on the internal side. We did everything that was required to be audited. And then in terms of being a reputable organization, there is a survey which is done. It's a combination of variables which results in a perception index. We also achieved that one. Now, other achievements which are not necessarily reflected in the annual report is that as part of our legislation, there is what is called a National Stakeholder Forum, which is a representative of contractors throughout the country. We engage with those, we look at what they want, and we try and achieve those things with them. So we did meet in October, and in terms of the legislation, the minister also must be present when we meet. But there is a lot of work which is done before that and a lot of work which is done after that. So the focus of the NSF was the development of the construction industry, the transformation of the industry, and the procurement side. You know, they want to be paid in time. They want to manage certain risks which happens during the implementation of projects, and also promoting uniform application of policy. Because what happens is that some provinces do things differently, and even within the provinces, some municipalities and parastatals do things differently. So we promote that as part of our pact with them. The other one is the variables in terms of register of projects, register of contractors, to actually look at the correlation, you know, to say that are we doing in those areas what we should be doing. We also achieved that target. Now, the other one, which is regulation and advocacy, it's also another added thing which we have on it for many years. It's called the best practice project fee. It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful of a term, but what it simply means is that this is a system where we levy some fees when projects are implemented by client departments, and then we take that money, we develop the skills in the industry, and we develop also enterprises. So we levy the money, and then we spend it for skills development as well as enterprise development. It was only signed and gazetted. It was signed earlier, late last year, but gazetted on the 18th of September. Unfortunately, it was a long process. So it's about an 18 months, 2-year process just to put the systems in place to make sure that it actually works. You know, because you need to communicate to the people. Once you start levying people, you must communicate properly to them. They must also put systems on their sides for being levied so that everything works well. But when this system is working well, we will have around 8 billion.
One of the participants mute herself.
It's Fiso, Chair.
Fiso, can you mute yourself? Thank you. Thank you.
Right. There will be about 8 billion for that development. We will develop around 1,000 contractors per year. So we're talking serious numbers once it's up and running. About 10% of the labor force on sites will also receive some structured workplace training. 450 million will be spent on that workplace training. 10,000 learning opportunities per year. We will be concentrating on FET learners as well as artisans, and we'll be creating 1,500 learning opportunities for candidates, which will be mainly professionals. And if you look at the bottom there, we are saying that this development approach will only work properly if the register of projects is done properly. What we have done with the register of projects before is that we report non-conformance to the AG. But what we are proposing now is that we must report that to committees like yourselves, the portfolio committee, portfolio committees as well, so that they can improve this compliance. At the moment, the compliance is roughly about 40%. So we need to improve that drastically for this process to work. Now, on the register of contractors, I'm just showing there the number of contractors. We had just over 55,000 contractors which were listed. You can actually see that in grade 1, because of what grade 1 to 9, in grade 1 we have a lot of contractors, in that category. Now, why we have a lot of categories in grade 1 is that if people think about a business, some of them, they are not there, because they are already in construction, but they said, look, let me just register and see what comes out, So our challenge there sometimes is to say, who is there just waiting and who is there actually doing work? And that person who's doing work, that's the person we must target for development, who must develop from grade 1 to grade 2. Now, one of the challenges we've had is that over the years, the construction industry has been declining because of the economic conditions. So COVID-19 just nailed the coffin at the end, but it was in decline. Now, one of the things which was taken by the CIDB board is a moratorium on downgrading contractors. So those are the contractors who would have been downgraded, 3,300 of them, but they were not downgraded because of this initiative. So that's one contribution of CIDB to make sure that we don't destroy the industry. Now, the other part which came from NSF and other stakeholders were that the value limits which are given to each grade was too small. So especially people who are grade 1, they used to say that, look, most of the contracts, they come up at 300,000. So what is the use of me registering if it's that low? So those tender limits were revised, and they should also be revised in 3 years, in about 2 to 3 years to come. Generally, most of them were doubled, or maybe another 40% increase. So there was a generous increase in them, and that was accepted very well by the industry. Now, the other thing which we have launched is the online registration. Now that we have implemented an ERP system, 2019, end of 2019, it has stabilized quite well during the first quarter of 2020. What we then do was to say, now, let's actually start online registration, because it improves service. People don't have to stand in queues. People don't have to travel long distances, because some people travel interprovincially. It reduces COVID-19 risk, and it also reduces fraud, because fraud happens because people are pushing a lot of paper, and some papers get missing, etc. What we have done is that we've done that only with grade 1. We piloted that in Gauteng, which is our biggest province. And then we are now doing that in KZN. And then we have limited online registration on grade 2 to 9. There are certain things we do online, but there are certain final things you have to come to the office. But it's something which is working very well under COVID-19 conditions. Now, going ahead with development and capacitation targets, skills development, as you can see, CIDB hasn't really have a lot of money for skills development. It was waiting for the project's assessment fee to improve that development. We had a 4 million which was placed, which was supposed to be used, and we used all of it. We now have 10 million before we actually have much more money for development going into the future. Business advisory service, we would like to see ourselves as advising contractors much more than just pushing paper to register them. So we also achieved that target. Also, export advisory, we always work in the SADC to make sure that our contractors as well can also go to our neighboring countries, and we give them advice how to actually do that, and we achieved that target. Now, in terms of contractor development, just to show you what we have done, we had a project in the Eastern Cape in a town known as Inguza Hill. We implemented a scheme there to actually help youth and women-owned contractors to develop. We worked hand in hand with the leadership of the municipality. We also have partnered with the Job Fund, which is an initiative funded by National Treasury. Unfortunately, we don't do it directly. We have an agent which we choose with the National Treasury. They are the ones implementing it. But the initiative seeks to develop 195 small and medium enterprises and create almost 2,000 jobs, and also make sure that there are new short-term and full-time positions in terms of those beneficiaries. Now, when we engaged with the NSF, they said one of their main things is the issue of contractor development. There are quite a few challenges which we actually have, because as CIDB, we don't do the contracted development itself, but we support it, through frameworks and training the trainer. But if you actually look at the challenges which we find with the clients, is that they don't monitor. Although we give them the systems to monitor, sometimes they don't fill things in time. The performance track record of contractors, they don't do it very well. And also sustainable development, because sometimes the funding is of the programs is ups and downs. And also the way they do it, although we do the framework, sometimes they deviate too much from the framework. And also the other one is actually the targeted procurement. What agencies tend to do, or certain clients, they don't go across from grade 1 to grade 9. They only do at the areas where they are more interested. So that's some of the challenges. Now, what we have done on ourselves is that we have provided them with the framework for contractor development program, which aims to improve development from grade 1 to 8. And we also provided them with guidelines for implementing of the CPDs. We also provide them with the monitoring and evaluation tool. So all the tools are there. We also train them in terms of using those tools. But obviously there are some challenges which they meet, and I'll also expand on some of those as well. Now, if you look at contractor development programs, all provinces have contractor development programs with whom we engage with, and they are in different departments or municipalities or metros. So it depends on each province. So if you look at KZN, the Department of Transport, DPW, DHHS, we've engaged with them. But on the right-hand side, it's the output. In KZN, that intervention is still under development. So you don't necessarily have the development in terms of the number of contractors. So we have that in Limpopo, we have that in Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Northwest, Free State, Mpumalanga, Western Cape. So where you actually see no outputs in various departments, it's because they are in planning stages. Now, those particular ones as well have a lot of challenges, which will help those departments or local municipalities to achieve. I've touched on them, like monitoring and evaluation is quite a challenge, but sometimes it's the human resources which are allocated in this part of their structure. Sometimes they don't have enough people to actually do the monitoring and training. Training of skills as well is a challenge. Funding of the program. You sometimes find that they've allocated money for 1 year, but it's actually a 3-year program. So it's important that when they budget for 3 years. And sometimes when provinces have to cut, they just cut from these budgets. I'm not going to go through that for the sake of time, but sometimes is that with people, I mean, the contractors are developed, but when it now comes to the availability of work, they are not considered. And the contractors do not really like that situation because they say, what is the use of being developed if we cannot get the work? We also interacted at the World Skills, that is for artisans, different kind of artisans. It's an international competition for artisans. We always run a national competition, and from those we selected the top 3. We had the top 3 from Eastern Cape, from Getsebande, in Mpumalanga, who was in bricklaying, and in KZN, electrical installation, and in Cape Town, it was in plumbing. Now, also the other things which we support, where we support development, we have a focus on women, and we have something called empowerment and recognition of women in construction. We usually call it Epwp. It was launched in 2019, but the actual awards actually happened on the 26th of August 2020 last year, and it was a very well attended, well appreciated initiative. And it did not end there because there have been some other workshops, and I've attended some of the workshops where the women themselves are creating their destiny and making sure that they can remove obstacles in terms of being marginalized in those areas. The other thing we're doing is that we partner, as I said, we partner with other institutions. We're partnering with the Department of Construction Management, University of Johannesburg, where we do research. We even also make sure that there will be, we support candidates who are doing postgraduate studies and make sure that we do research in rural academic areas as well. So it's a way of making sure that we have an enhanced research capacity, which is not necessarily all residing within CIDB. On the industry performance and transformation, the targets there, we also match them. There is something which we call construction monitor transformation reports. It's a very, very important report because it's well researched in terms of transformation. We want to know what are the obstacles in transformation, how do we go about it, how do we sustain it, and how does it look like in different provinces, different regions, etc. So that is the target we met for that part. And then improving competitiveness in the industry through support. We had a target of spending 10 million there, and we actually spent more than that, so we achieved the target. Now, the other one in terms of transformation is that, you know, we can talk about all the initiative, but some people say, but how does the industry looks like in terms of ownership? So we also track that nationally and provincially and in regions as well. Now, sorry, I've jumped a slide. How do I go back? Right, the first one was Black ownership, and then the next one is women ownership. Now, what we do is that we look at 51% ownership, and we also look at 91% ownership, and we look at that ownership across the different grades. And on the right-hand side there, you are actually having a bar graphs which actually indicate that ownership. Now, there is always a general trend that Black ownership is more in, say, grade 2 to 6, you know, which are lower graded contractors, but it gets less as you actually go there at the top. But if you look at it, at there, we are roughly at 25, 26%, going down to roughly 17%. So that ownership, it's still not great if you look at hard statistics, but at least we monitor that whether it improves or not. Obviously, COVID-19 might have an impact in those numbers as we go forward. We might not get them increasing, but maybe decreasing. Youth ownership as well, we track it. It's still very low. It's lower than women ownership, it's lower than Black ownership, but we also track it. Now, we register different classes of work. Typically there you have got general buildings, there you have civil engineering, and at the end there you have got specialized classes of work. So if you look at general buildings, you have got more people because it's easier to register in there. There's a lot of work available. But as you go across to much more specialized work, less Black ownership, there is less Black ownership in those areas. And also the Black ownership reduces from the lower grade to the top grade. You have got lesser ownership in the top grade. Now, we also have just some statistics for provinces. I am not going to be dealing with them blow by blow. We've got Black ownership in Eastern Cape, that's how it looks like. Women ownership in Eastern Cape, youth ownership in Eastern Cape. Somehow the youth in Eastern Cape on grade 9 are quite aggressive for some reason or another. So that is the Free State, Black ownership, women ownership, youth ownership. Black ownership, Gauteng is very representative of the bigger graph nationally because it's actually quite a big area. And women ownership, youth ownership. KZN is also the second biggest province in terms of contractors. It also emulates Gauteng as well as the national statistics. Limpopo province, we have statistics Mpumalanga, Northwest, Northern Cape. You must notice that in Northern Cape, you don't have a grade 9, generally because it's the economic activity which becomes a problem. And what usually happens is that grade 9s come from Gauteng, and they are not very happy in Northern Cape to have outsiders coming to take their work. Now, youth ownership or Northern Cape, okay, Western Cape, we also have statistics which are similar to those. Right, now I will now talk about the non-achievements and look at what they are. Now, the targets, we have just grouped them together, the targets which we can achieve. One of the targets is to register within 21 days, the contractors within 21 days. The other one is the satisfied contractors. We do a survey of satisfied contractors during the registration process. And then the other one is also the applications captured by province within 7 days. So those are registration outputs within a certain number of time, as well as this satisfaction of registration of services. Now, the key thing which really impacted on that was the system, because we launched the system in November, December. It created quite a lot of havoc. And then this one where the output of contractor development programs, we had one in KZN which was supposed to have some outputs which needed to be calculated, but unfortunately those were supposed to be calculated when the COVID-19 lockdown started, so everything stood still there. They couldn't do anything, so we did not get any returns from there. Right, now I'm coming now to audit outcomes, and then I will give the CFO to take us through the COVID outcomes. And CFO, I know that you are waiting for a baby today or tomorrow or yesterday, so I'm sure that you are not inside the theater. So if you can just take us through, if it's not the moment.
Thank you, CEO. Good afternoon, as well as the members of the Parliament and colleagues. In terms of the audit outcome for 2019-20, we achieved an unqualified audit opinion. Of course, there were a few areas of improvement that we needed to do for us to be able to qualify for a clean audit report. I think the main challenges that was actually posed by the AG was that there were errors which were identified on the report which was submitted primarily from the annual financial statement, as well as the annual performance report, which we send for the audit purposes. They raised about 38 findings. I think of the 38 findings, we resolved all of 28, and there were 10 which were followed up in the current year. The root cause of those particular findings were mainly around the lack of skills to support the key personnel. There was sort of a failure to focus on the root causes of the audit findings. Which is also similar to the first one, was that there were key positions that were not filled on time. I think the difference between the two is that if you're looking at the lack of skill to support key personnel, that would relate to, for example, the second level of management position like your financial management, which will need to support the CFOs, whilst the key positions, it will relate to the executive positions, which I think were still vacant in the period under review. Then there were also an issue on the record keeping, where I think in submitting the document, there was sort of a delay, even though we did actually submit the document, but the AG raises a concern that we're not able to meet their 2 days turnaround time, of which we agreed upon with them in the beginning of the audit, when we signed the audit plan. There was also an issue in terms of the inadequate control measures to address issues of the financial statement for both the AFS as well as the performance reports, meaning that we need to have systems in place to make sure that errors are not are repeated, as to say. And if we move to slide 74. Can we move to the next slide, C? What we have done in terms of addressing those issues that were, in terms of the areas which were highlighted by the AG, we have put sort of a plan in place, and that plan is what we follow up, and we report that plan to the ARGC as well to our board, and we are using our internal auditors to help us in resolving those plans and ensuring that we are able to chase them, in ensuring that we are able to resolve them. I think the first one which we have was that of aligning internal audit plan with the AG focus area to identify errors prior to the AG. I think what the AG was saying your control, which is internal auditors, must be able to work in terms of overall plan of the AG to able to reduce findings before the audit. What we've done, we have redrafted them with the AG's plan, which of the following up of findings, whereby you are ranking them in according to importance, track record, and root causes. We have developed an audit checklist, which is also part of our ESCO agenda, and the internal auditors, what they do check that that plan and report to the audit committee on a quarterly basis. On the issues of a key position to be filled, we developed, because of course we need to work within the affordability. We have identified key positions which I think we need to ensure that we fill within CIDB budget affordability, and we are monitoring those particular positions, and we are in the process of ensuring that some of them are being filled within the period. There was also an issue of report to the audit committee progress on the addressing of finding, whereby the committee is exercising oversight. We have also done that exercise whereby the audit follow-up is completed, and it's also monitored by the internal audit committee, and it's a standing item, and the board then report, the committee then report to the board about the progress which we're making on those particular item. There was also a recommendation that we must produce interim financial statement for the audit, which we'll be using as a benchmarking for the audit purposes. We are in progress. We will be able to to produce the interim report, which we'll be discussing with our ARGC as well as internal audit to ensure that we're able to prepare ourselves before we submit the financial statement to the Auditor General. So we have put a plan in place, and I think it's putting us in a better position to be able to minimize the issue of the report redressing. But what we're aiming for is an improved report for 2021. I think if we then move to the financial statements. In terms of the financial statement, I will speak on two areas of our performance. The first one is the financial performance, which was referred in the past as the income statement as well as the balance sheet. In terms of the revenue, if you're looking at overall revenue or total revenue, if you compare the previous year with the current year, there's a slight decline in our revenue. In the previous year, we collected about 190, and in the current year, our revenue collection was about 189 million, which is a decline from the previous year. If we're looking at the areas of where the revenue decline is coming from, the first one, if you're looking at the assessment fee, they're on top, which is not 11. Our assessment fee, which is the revenue collected from the registration services, with the construction industry slowing down, because the effects of COVID-19, even though there was a hard lockdown on the 27th of March, but with the construction industry, we started seeing a sort of a decline in the spend from the 15th of December 2019. So what that did to us, the CIDB, the activities of the registration activities then started slowing down within that period, because there would have been no more. There were few work orders which were issued by government. So from that period, we started to see a decline in our revenue from December 15 up until the hard lockdown. So our assessment fee, which is the revenue CIDB generate by registering our contractors, we saw a decline of about 1 million, and also the annual fees as well. The annual fees, because of the fact that there were not much opportunities in the market, we also saw a decline in that aspect, from 53 million in the previous year to 49 in the current year. And then I think that's where we saw a huge reduction in our revenue. As a result, the total revenue was affected. But then if you're looking at other income, like the finance income, there was an improvement of about 2 million. And of course, if you're looking at other elements which are not significant, then it should then result in that reduction check. And of course, the government grant went up about 3 million, which is about 3%. But it then does relate to say that the biggest reduction came from CIDB's own revenue generation. If you're looking at the expenditure, how do you spend the money as a CIDB? From the employee benefit cost, there's an increase of about 83 million, from 83 to about 89, which is about 7%, which would be mainly your general increases, plus of course new position that were filled within the period. Members emolument, which is the board remuneration, remain constantly within the range of about 3.7 million. Depreciation, because of the new acquisition of asset, went down from 4 million to about 3 million. And then finance cost was significantly reduced, because as CIDB, we do not rely mainly on borrowing. We reduce our borrowing, so we moved from 28,000 down to about 4 million. Debt impairment was slightly increased. Of course, if the industry is constrained, you will see that people will not be able to service their obligation to the CIDB. And then you're also looking at loss on assets written off. We also we reduced that from 819 to about 299, and of course the operating expenditure went up from 70 to 90. And then the surplus for the year was about 2 million. That is in comparison to the previous year of about 26 million. Of course, we did indicate that the huge contributing effect is the fact that you have got revenue, which is declining, whilst your expenditure is going up. So the result is that your surplus will then reduce, because your revenue is not sufficient enough to be able to service the cost. The increase in revenue is declining, whilst the increase in your expenditure is superseding the increase in your revenue. Then if we move to the balance sheet, CEO. Okay. I think in terms of the CIDB, yes, I think we must actually acknowledge that we do appreciate that there's sort of a difficult times facing the SOEs. However, I think as a CIDB, we are in a much better position if you look into our balance sheet, or even if you compare our balance sheet within the period of about 10 years, or even about 5 years. If you're looking at our balance sheet, we currently have a sort of a strong balance sheet. If you're looking at the previous year, our total asset value was about 263, and then we've moved to 287. If you're looking at where is CIDB is investing its particular resources, or where the resources are, from the fixed assets, which is non-current assets, property and plant and equipment in the previous year was about 10, then this year is about 8.7. In intangible assets, as the CEO did indicate that we invested in ERP, there was sort of a huge investment there from 8.8 million to 33 million. Then if you're looking at current assets, the receivables from exchange remain constantly. And then the cash and equivalent, I think this is what we pride ourselves as the CIDB. We have quite a very healthy cash or bank balance. I think in far as we're concerned, we're one of the better performing entities. We currently carrying about 241 million and then it says remain constantly both in 2019 and 2020, where our going concern have remained green as rated by the AG. Then if you move into current liabilities and then to see what is CIDB's exposure in terms of its balance sheet. As we indicated, the finance lease obligation, we have serviced that out. We have no lending facility in terms of that finance lease obligation. So we're able to service that particular aspect out. The payable from exchange went up a bit from 13 million to 25 million. I think the reason why we had a big jump in that aspect is the fact that when the hard lockdown happened, some of the estate entities were not equipped or had the mechanism in place to ensure that CIDB receives invoices and statement to be able to pay them before the 31st of March. We're talking about entities like your SAPS, your SIU, and other state entities, whereby we ended up having to carry them as an obligation because we did not receive their invoices in time. It was mainly your government entities whom could not have a system in place to be able to put those in place. Provision, they have remained within constantly. Provision, Chair. Income received in advance, of course, the income received in advance increased slightly because of the fact that how CIDB operates. You receive application and a payment from your contractors, and then you put that money as an application to the CIDB up until you process them. So we had a bit of a because we closed our books on the 27th, so we had a bit of a work in progress that was still outstanding, which we processed in the month of March, April, and May. As a result, there was an increase in the income received in advance. But the net asset or accumulated surplus improved from 176 to 178 Chair, which does give indication that from our balance sheet, we quite have a bit of a good balance sheet, which is good. I think CEO, thank you. I'll hand over back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, CFO, for the presentation. We can then take questions.
Thank you, CEO and the CFO for the presentation that was preceded by the chairperson of the board. Indeed, the presentation was able to cover a number of areas that you reported to us in the previous encounter, that it will be an integral part of your APP and your strat plan. Having said that, I will then invite and open the floor to honorable members to engage with the presentation. I've noted the questions that are posed by Honorable Matebula on the chat, and I've also noted Honorable Khai, then I've noted Honorable Tim, and then Honorable Boshoff. In that fashion, let's start.
Chairperson, Honorable Mushodi also.
Honorable Mushodi noted, and then Honorable Dango. Yes, thank you. Let's start with Honorable Khai.
Oh, I'm trying to. Sorry, Chair. I was trying to unmute myself and put on the video. And thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to DM, honorable members, and the Chairperson of the board, the CEO, CFO and other senior managers. Chair, you've already expressed words of condolences on behalf of the committee, so I don't need to repeat that. Thank you for the presentation and the opening remarks by the Deputy Minister. Chair, the first point I just wanted to say is that I read the annual report, the whole book. When you look at the minister's forward, it says CIDB needs the expertise and tools to ensure that the sector delivers meaningful transformation and growth. My question would be, what kind of expertise and tools is the minister referring to when it talks about those expertise and tools, whether CIDB doesn't have such tools currently? The other issue that the minister is referring to in her forward is that the register of contracts has been the focus and attention of several meetings of the legislated National Stakeholders Forum. Can the DM or the chairperson of the board or the CEO share with the committee the kind of concerns that are raised in the NSF? But also the minister talks about the review of the CIDB Act. My question would be, when do we envisage that those amendments will be brought to Parliament, given that we are now in 2021, this term will end in 2024, perhaps in the middle of 2024. And sometimes it takes a long period to process. The law must go to cabinet, must go to NETLAC, and a very long process. So can we just get an indication, more or less, when are we expecting to get those amendments? And also, CIDB has voiced its commitment to support the Epwps. If we can just get clarity as to how the CIDB is going to do that, given that our understanding that its role is regulatory. And therefore, how is it going then to support the Epwps? On the issue of a moratorium on the downgrading, perhaps there should be some explanation here so that we have a similar understanding. My understanding that when there's a downgrading, it means therefore those that were in a particular grade are failing to meet certain requirements of those particular grades, and therefore they need to be downgraded. But now when you say there's a moratorium, it means therefore that even if they fail to meet the requirements, they will still remain in those grades, unless my understanding is not correct. So I need to be educated with regard to the moratorium, because it has been there since 2016, 2017. So if I can be educated with regard to what do you mean by moratorium on the downgrading. I know that it has benefited a number of those that are in those particular grades that have not been downgraded, but I need to be schooled as to whether what does it mean in terms of the requirements of those particular grades, whether those that in those grades meet the required standards. Chair, on the issue of the compliance, if you look at the 2018-2019 annual reports, you find that there were still a number of compliances that non-compliance that could not be finalized by the 31st of 2019 March. Therefore, they were perhaps kind of like taken over to the following or the current year that we under review. We want to check if those non-compliances offenses have now been dealt with in addition to the current ones. Also, with regard to the transformation, Chair, if you look at the statement that is in the report, the issue of that there are fewer than 40% of CIDB registered in grade 9 that are black owned. It's the same statement that was in the 2018-2019 annual report. So therefore, it means there's not much that the institution is doing to ensure that we move away from that 40%. There should be a positive progress with regard to the transformation in this sector. So even with that, another issue that I wanted to check, Chair, is on the advisory services. In the previous report, the institution talked government agency, the construction incubator, the SIC. I just want to check if there is still that partnership, because it doesn't appear now in the report. It just general says there are agencies that CIDB works with. If we could have just explaining perhaps in each and every province which are other institutions that the CIDB is partnering with regard to those advisory services, but also the kind of services that are being offered. We appreciate the initiative by the Jobs Fund to assist the emerging contractors. Let me just end there, Chair. But perhaps the last one from me would be whether, in terms of the number of jobs first in the institution itself, we appreciate the fact that the key positions, the CEO, the CFO, and the Chief Information Officers have been filled. We want to check if all the other senior positions have now been filled. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Khai. I will now allow Honorable Tim to take the podium.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see colleagues again today. Chair, the presentation started off with a quotation from the Constitution, Section 22 in specifics. It says, every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely. Full stop. The practice of a trade, occupation, and profession may be regulated by law, and that is cited as the authority for the CIDB. But my experience with the CIDB up to now is that the CIDB likes to rely on this particular constitutional provision, but doesn't like the obligations that come with it. And I'll give a specific example. I've asked the CIDB before about when this committee can be presented with a list of companies that have not achieved and should not be doing work in the construction industry. Perhaps they have been awarded tenders and taken the money and not done the work. I'm not talking about people learning the trade. I'm talking about people who are outwardly corrupt and outwardly are just not doing the work, or frankly are just absolutely not skilled to do the work that they're advised. And I was told at that point that, no, that's up to clients to work on that. So my problem is that the CIDB cannot rely on a regulation placed in the Constitution which allows them to regulate the industry. When something goes wrong, they just push it off to the client. And I'm very glad that Honorable Khai raised the issue of the downgrading, because Honorable Khai has raised something I didn't know, is that this started in 2016, 2017. But in the presentation, the presenter, I think it was Mr. Gamede, said that this was a COVID-related thing. And then, Chair, once again, we have yet another COVID excuse. And COVID is serious, we know that. But as we all know, people are starting to use COVID as an excuse for everything. So the question I want to do to augment what Honorable Khai asked is, when is the sunset clause on the COVID excuse? When is the sunset clause on the COVID excuse? When are we going to have contractors that are not doing the work properly downgraded? Because that is vital. Mr. Gamede also pointed out, so that is my first question. When is the downgrade going to happen? When are you going to take responsibility in terms of your constitutional mandate to actually do that work as well, and not just rely on the rights you have, but also your obligations? The other issue is, the question is that there's a large group of contractors that are in grade 1. And Mr. Gamede actually said that it's simply because CIDB don't know who these people are, whether they're genuine construction partners or whether they are just people who have registered a construction company hoping for a tender. Well, from my understanding is that if you did proper grading in the first place, you would know who the chances are and who the people are who genuinely want to do the work. So that points out to me that you've got a massive problem with your grading issue, especially at level 1, that you cannot differentiate between tenderpreneurs and people who actually want to do the work. The next question I want to ask the CIDB is, and once again it comes down to not shifting the weight and dodging responsibility, is we've raised with SANRAL in this committee, we've raised with Transport in this committee, the urgent need for a interministerial task team to attack the issue of rogue units that go out and disrupt the work of exactly the contractors that CIDB is trying to assist. They go out and they do it through criminal action. Now, I'm quite sure that CIDB are going to say that's not our problem. Well, in fact, it is, because you've relied on a constitutional provision that quite clearly says every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely. Now, when you're working on a construction site and criminals arrive and chase you off site on the threat of death, you're not being able to exercise your profession freely, are you? Or your occupation for that matter. So what is CIDB going to do in terms of actually motivating and joining in a joint effort to try and get rid of rogue units? Because those rogue units, as this committee knows, have a lot to do with the slowing down of contracts. And that leads to service delivery issues, and it just expands and expands and expands. The other thing I wanted to ask was, so that is the next question. What is CIDB going to do in terms of actually not just relying on their rights, but also their obligations? Contractor development. This committee needs to receive a detailed plan of how that contractor development is linked to grading, and surely it should be outcome-based. Surely if you're a construction entity and you're not doing any work and you're not playing along and you're effectively just ignoring the CIDB, then you should not receive any further assistance. The CIDB seem to be blind in the forest at night, that they can't actually pick out who they should be helping and who they should not be helping. We need clear direction on that. And then just my last question, Chair, for now, is if you look at page 73 of the presentation relating to the audit outcome, from my time in Scopa and from my knowledge of financials, what I see there is clearly a sign of a deficient audit committee. All of those issues, the lack of skilled staff, the failure to focus on root causes of audit findings, the key positions that were not filled on time, record-keeping deficiency which delay the audit process, inadequate control measures to detect material findings, that all comes down to a strong audit committee. So can the CEO or the DM, whoever is available to help us with that, give us an idea of what their audit committee looks like, how well are they funded, how many people work in that audit committee, and are their recommendations taken seriously by leadership? Because that is always the root cause of this sort of problem, is when your audit committee is not strong. Chair, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Honorable Tim. Let me then invite Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. The majority of the questions have been asked by my colleagues. I'm just going to ask the following. The 3 winners of the World Skills Extravaganza, what happens to them once they've been sent to participate in this extravaganza and they come back to South Africa? Are they placed in jobs or do they have to seek work on their own? My second question is the online registration. I understand you implemented it in May and it is doing very well and it's eradicating the social distancing for people not having to stand in rows. Could you give us an indication of how many people have applied? And I'd also like to know how many of the applicants are women, disabled, youth, etc., etc. I spoke about disabled. I haven't seen anything about the disabled people in your report. Do they apply as well for anything in the construction industry? If so, could you give us a breakdown on that? I'm very pleased to hear that the lockdown had some positive news for you, that you were able to eradicate your backlogs. Can you please inform us whether this will now be kept up to date so that we don't see a recurrence of backlogs? You speak of 450 million to spend on workplace training. How do you determine which business will benefit from this training? And then I'm very worried about the record-keeping deficiencies. This is definitely going to lead to a ripple effect, and I'd like to know then how you're going to address and ensure that records are kept for future reference. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. Honorable Mushori.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start to greet the GM and also thanks very much for the presentation. Honorable Chairperson, most of the question was asked by the previous members, but let me add 1 or 2 questions. My first question, Chairperson, is going to be on the key position that was not filled by department on time. My understanding is that the progress currently is underway, but I think, Chair, it's very important for department to give us a time frame when they're going to fill this position so that the department can function properly with this post that is not filled on time. The second one, Honorable Chairperson, I just want to check the department. Did they have any disability person as a permanent employee within the department, Honorable Chairperson? On the issue of online registration, I just want to check, the department, did they winning coming to get the application from the people that are staying in deep rural area like myself, Honorable Chairperson? Thank you very much for now, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Moshodi, for those questions. Honorable Dango.
Thank you, Chairperson. It's nice to come in last. All the questions have in fact been asked. However, there are two things I think that we just need to focus on that was not spoken about. One is the organization CIDB has got the regulatory role. Do they actually monitor the question of retentions for work done and look at repairing if work was not done adequately, using that retention to actually take that forward? Or can they give some thought to the question of guarantees or insurance for workmanship and support, so that we wouldn't have houses collapsing or whatever, a bridge collapsing somewhere that was done by a constructor that they've actually registered? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Dango. Can we then request the committee secretary just to read the questions that are posed by Honorable Matebula on the chat?
Thank you, Chairperson. There are two questions on the chat from Honorable Matebula. The first one goes like, people living with disability are mostly ignored and suffer discrimination. Does your department consider them, as we don't see anything that speak about them in your presentation? The next question, what is your department doing to address the decrease on the women-owned enterprises in terms of transformation and CIDB grades? Thank you, Chair.
There are other questions before that. Can you also read them? The one which start with which rural academic institutions?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chairperson. The question reads as follows: which rural academic institution have you partnered with in the building environment, especially those who empower women to join construction industry? In your presentation, we don't see anything regarding people with disability. What might be the challenge in this regard? Does your department have plan to fill key positions that was not filled on time in the previous financial year? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Committee Secretary. Maybe just one from my side, one or two. The role that the CIDB has played in the year under review in terms of preparing itself for the implementation of the district development model. It will be important just to get a sense in terms of the appreciation in terms of the support that we will give to all the districts that were identified as part and parcel of the district development model. That is important, particularly given the regulatory role that CIDB is expected to play, particularly around the challenges that the report is reflecting on the issue of transformation. It's reflected on the report that in terms of the transformation in the construction sector, there is slow progress, and the fact that there is an increase in the number of black-owned enterprises in the lower grade, but when it goes to the upper grade, there are fewer. I think it's an indictment on us as the regulatory body. Of course, expecting your intervention and support to the stakeholders that you have referred to, both in terms of the departments, metros, and municipalities. The fact that there are fewer contractors at grade 9, it might be important just to get a sense in terms of given the imperatives of the district development model, more so the absence of black-owned contractors in both the Northern Cape and also the Western Cape. What is it that could be done to ensure that that dilemma, because it's directly linked to the issue of transformation? Of course, we are mindful of the provision, the right to trade as articulated in Section 22 of the Constitution. But I think the issue of localization is important. At the same time, it has to be approached within the context of ensuring that regionalism and provincialization is not improved, is not encouraged. But I think what is quite critical is that is to get a sense in terms of what is that could be done from your side to ensure that that lacuna that is identified in terms of transformation, both in the Northern Cape and Western Cape, is addressed. There is also a reflection, which obviously we appreciate, the investigation that you have conducted around non-compliance. The ANC-led government, in terms of its fight against corruption, is quite categorically a no, and we note the number of the cases that you have investigated, and those that you have finalized, those that are still pending. If you can just share with us in terms of the nature of those investigations, such that at least from the eyes of the public, there is a sense of appreciation in terms of what are the nature of those investigations and cases that we have identified that we need to flag, so that there is no repeated offenders in terms of these issues. Over to you, DM.
Chairperson?
Yes.
Before they respond, Mr. Apleni says he sent a message on the chat. I cannot see the message, so I will request him to resend the message. Because
Apleni,
I can't see it on the chat.
Where's your chat?
Number 2, Chairperson, I'll request the presenter to take off, the presentation now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Apleni?
Chair, I'm sorry, I have a problem of network, so that is why I actually sent the comments on the chats, but I'll send them if you can see them.
It has not reached us because you're on the platform. You can recite them now.
I'll just resend them because I have a problem of network. I'm sure it will cut off any time.
Let's then agree the team to respond, and then I want to believe that while they're responding, you will be able to send them. Over to you, dear.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to the members for their comments and questions. My modus operandi, Chair, is always to allow, especially the members of the board,
the chairperson of the board and the CEO to respond first, and I will come last, if you allow me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear. Chair?
Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister. So I'll take the two questions on the whether the audit committee is functioning effectively and whether the members appointed are actually able to undertake their work, and the one on the positions. So the question is whether there's a functioning audit committee. Yes, there is. We've also recently, I think 2 months ago, appointed an independent chairperson who is outside of the board, who is outside of the CIDB, and the individual is now chairing the audit committee, and she's also a qualified chartered accountant. So yes, we do have the right resources. The audit committee does also meet regularly. We've got the right people in the audit committee that got the right skills. I think the closing of the audit findings is as how the CFO has explained in terms of us trying to close some of the findings. But yes, and we also have an independent outside audit committee firm that manages our internal audit affairs. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So yes, that's correct. We do function very well and we meet regularly. On the item of vacancies, the only vacancy that affects the board, I would say, that is applicable to us managing it with the CEO would be the Chief Operations Officer. That position was advertised, I think, in about 3-4 weeks ago. And I understand that there is a plan to execute to fill that vacancy. We have filled the chief, the chief, the IT position was filled, sorry. And also our concern was to fill this Chief Operations Officer position. And of course, the CEO position is also filled. The other positions is with the CEO's office, and he will explain the plan that is available to him. And then I will give over to Mr. Kamidi to answer all the other questions. If there is a question related to the board, I will also interject when he is presenting and give our perspective. Over to you, Mr. Kamidi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, honorable members. It's quite a mouthful of questions, but I have jotted them down. I think there was a question which was asking.
Chairperson?
Yes.
May we request Mr. Gamede to put the camera on when he's responding to the question?
Mr. Gamede, can you comply with that?
This audio was also quite bad, Chairperson.
Yes, no, you're correct. You're correct. Yeah. Over to you, Mr. Gamede.
Looks like he's reporting from San Francisco, so maybe that's why.
Right. No, I'm actually quite close. My apologies. Okay. Okay. Right. I was just making sure that everything is switched off here. I'm not sure where that interference is coming from. Right. Now, there was an issue about expertise and tools where the minister referred to in the annual report. Now, what has happened? In fact, if you look at the CIDB, the development part of the CIDB has not been really functioning well because the part has not been resourced. And the way of resolving this part was to implement the best practice fee. Now, the best practice fee, in fact, has been talked about for the past 5 years. But fortunately, the minister has signed it last year, and it was gazetted in September last year, and we are now planning to actually implement that. So that's one of the tools which was needed by CIDB to implement development. Now, the other tool as well, which the minister has referred to, is the register of professionals. Currently, we only register contractors, and what is happening is that the CIDB Act, it sort of hints that we can register professionals, but it doesn't do so expressly. So as part of improving that part is that the new Act will actually incorporate a clear direction that we are allowed to register professionals. Because whenever we start this process of registering professionals, they always argue that no, it's not very clear in your Act, and they sort of defy the process. Now, the other one was about the issues or concerns which are raised at NSF. We have engaged with NSF, and a range of concerns were raised, but we are actually dealing with them. Now, if you look at the range of issues raised at NSF, it's not only just about CIDB, but they are expecting CIDB to help contractors to sort of alleviate that pain. Now, I'm not sure, there is some interference. I'm just trying to see where it's coming from.
Mr. Gamidi, I suggest you take your San Francisco picture down. I think it's causing that.
Okay, let me just put my speaker off. Okay, all right. Okay, I've put my speaker off.
Yes, that's better.
That's better. Oh, okay. I've put my speaker off. I hope that sort of helps. Right. Now, the concerns from NSF, it's a range of things. Now, some of the things it's things which the government has always committed to do, but it doesn't happen. Payment within 30 days. A lot of client departments are supposed to pay contractors in 30 days, but the contractors complain that sometimes they are paid in 2 years, 1 year, 3 years. So that's one of the things which we always want help, even from the portfolio committees as well as the select committees, to make sure that all client departments pay on time, because that's a commitment already which is there. The other one, which somebody touched upon, this issue of guarantees. They were actually saying that sometimes when they finish their work, they don't get guarantees. They want that to be sorted out. The issue of VAT, there are all sorts of issues about VAT. They also want issues about VAT developed. So there are those issues which CIDB can directly resolve, and there are some other issues which other client departments must help in sorting out. The amendments of the Act is currently underway, and I think by the end of June, yeah, it is at an advanced stage. So by the end of June, I think the Act really should be ready for the next stage. Now, the EPWP, how do we support the EPWP? Now, what we have done is that as part of national contractor development programs, we have asked the programs to make sure that they don't sort of treat EPW people as just laborers, but they must also get those people who have skills and they can actually have leadership on them, have leaderships with them, so that those people can advance. What we also have is we have a learner registration system on our side. Now that learner registration system is that when people are in any form of training within the construction industry, we take those people and put them in the system, so you can see where those people were trained in, etc., etc. Now they have focused before only on artisans, but what we are actually saying is that they must now make sure that there are technical programs for EPW, and then we put them in the learner system so that whenever maybe that EPW program ends, we know exactly that that person was there in that municipality, he or she was trained on a particular skill to actually maybe get artisanship. That is what is outstanding. So that is how we are contributing on the EPWP development. Now, the moratorium explanation that it started in 2016, 2017, and it's actually still with us. Now, I think it's actually important to understand the rationale of why the moratorium started. Now, if you actually look at the criteria which are used for grading, there are mainly two. The first one is your financial achievement. How much work in your income statement did you achieve that year? So if you have achieved a certain amount, X, and therefore you can remain in that. So that's one criteria. The other one is the size of the projects you have been involved in. So if you have been involved in so many big projects, accumulated, then you tick, But if you then look at those two credits, they are very related to the economic conditions of the construction industry. So if then the economy is slow, and you are not able to get enough jobs, say you were supposed to achieve, let's say, 100 million that year in terms of your grading, and you achieved 80. And then you were supposed to do projects of a certain size, maybe let's say they are 10, and you did 8. What we are saying is that it was not really fault of yours because the economy is down, and therefore that is the condonation which is given. So in other words, is that you are not saying that you are condoning people who did not achieve the right output of work. It's not about the quality of the output of the person, but it's because the economic conditions were not in good shape. So that is really the gist of the moratorium. People who don't deliver quality, there's a different sanction for them. But this one, the moratorium, is just on those two criteria, which are economic related. Now, there was a question also about compliance, old and new compliance. The CEO, I think he did paint a picture of the progress in some of the things which were not compliant and how we've moved. I think there was a slide which talked about that. And then the other one was transformation, that it's less than 40%, and it's not changed. And the question is, what does CIDB do about it? Now, I think it's very important. I know that sometimes people feel that CIDB tries to dodge the bullet, but I think one must actually understand how CIDB as a regulator and a developer works. We work with client departments, so it's important that client departments, let's look, for instance, at the spend, the actual spend of projects, if we are looking at transformation, to black contractors. CIDB does not spend money on black contractors, but the client departments will spend money on on contractors. So what we do is that we facilitate that, we give them statistics so that they can improve. So it must be realized that when the spend, let's say, of capital doesn't happen, it's not only CIDB who is to blame, but the people who have money to actually spend on black contractors. If those client departments don't, then there is a problem. I mean, I will share a very similar cry by black lawyers and advocates. They always argue that the state spends less on them than they spend on their counterparts. Now, all facilitating organizations, they can facilitate, but at the end of the day, is the state which actually spend on that. So I'm not trying to dodge the bullet there, but I'm saying it's a dual responsibility between CIDB and the actual spending departments in those areas. Now, that's how you grow the black economic class, by actually spending on them, making sure that they do get projects as we go along. Now, the other one was a partnership with construction industry agents. We've got quite a few, like the Job Fund. We have the construction industry incubator. We had an MOU before. We are now trying to revive it to make sure that they can get back into action. Unfortunately, they haven't had a CEO for some time. Now they have a CEO, and we are working with the CEO to get them back in terms of being part of the construction industry. But we partner also with other people like CIDA in whatever footprint they have. And we also partner with industry associations like Master Builders Associations and others. So we partner because we cannot do work ourselves 100% because we don't have capacity in terms of manpower and even the actual money to do so. So we partner and we continue to partner. Right. The other one was the statement which says that with section 22 of the Constitution, we only want what is coming to us, but not necessarily the obligations to that. Now, the first one was that the list of people, of service providers who are not doing well or who are breaching the code, we have not provided it. There was a question of this nature last year, and we actually provided all of the cases as well as what we have actually done with those particular construction companies. So anybody who breaches the code of CIDB, there is a process which a person goes through, and we actually then give sanctions. Now, one of the tools which has been raised is that, the only sanction, the highest sanction which CIDB can give is 100,000 fine. Now there are questions to actually say that because the act is very old and the 100,000 fine is in the act, it's actually meaningless in these days. Part of revising the act is that we must make the fine meaningful. I mean, if you look at fines from the Competition Commission, they talk about a percentage of your income. That's actually how you make the fine meaningful. So we will actually have better sanctions going forward. Now, the other one was the issue of the moratorium, which I have dealt with. The other one was the grade 1, and it was probably I think maybe I didn't explain myself properly in the beginning, because the assertion there is that we have a problem with the grading system because we don't know who is who. Now, what I was saying about grade 1, first of all, when you register for grade 1, you are not graded. There is no grade for grade 1. You are only graded when you move from grade 1 to grade 2. So with grade 1, all what you do is you register. So those are the rules of the grading system. So you register there. So because there are no limitations of register, some people do come and register because they think I should be in construction. And then if you look at the company, it doesn't have any activity when you look at some of those. So we actually know that there are those people who come in and they have no activities. But there are some people who are genuine who come in, they've got activities, and usually those are the people who then apply for grade 2. When people apply for upgrading, it's because they've been active, because you cannot apply if you have not been active. So we're not blind of that grade 1. But what I was saying is that some people just see an opportunity, they come in and park there, And you must also remember that the fee for grade 1 entry is 450 rands for 3 years. So in other words, you get in there with your 450, you do nothing, you stay there for 3 years, you are fine. So we know what is happening, but we're actually saying that it's not everybody in grade 1 who is in the construction industry. They are active, they want to do work. Some of them, they just want to see what is happening. The other one is the issue of site invasions. Now, site invasions also, as CIDB, we must partner with a variety of stakeholders. One, even the police, because some of these site invasions get very violent, So we can't only deal with ourselves. So with some industry partners as well, we partner with them. MPSA, we partner with them, and SAFSEC, we partner with them because they do a lot of projects. BBC, BE, we partner with them. So we partner with a lot of stakeholders so that we get a variety of issues. Now, what has come out very clearly in these site invasions is because people say that we are not empowered, especially the local people. They always say that we're not empowered, So that is one of the biggest variables of the empowerment issue. Now, that is actually why as CIDP, we always then push the issue of contractor development programs in all areas. Because what happens is that if there is a site invasion, but there is a contractor development program which you have, and you can develop some of the people in those areas, then you actually get less sort of resistance from the criminal element. Because some of the people, when they come for these site invasions, all what they do is that they want a 30% payment upfront. They don't want the 30% of the work, But if you have got some people in the area who are actually benefiting from the work, then it reduces in real term this issue of site invasion. But the criminal element will always be there. We're talking about outcome-based development. Yes, our development is outcome-based because we know we always need returns from the agencies we partner with to say, how many contractors have you trained? One of the documents I showed you, you can see on the right-hand side that the people there actually give us the number of people who are being trained. Now, the audit committee, the chair has dealt with that. Now, there was a question about the winners, of the world skills. Now, from a CIT point of view, what we encourage, we're encouraging excellence in TVET colleges, because if you are South African and you are not exposed at how other people do work around the world, it becomes problematic, So that's why we have the national competitions. We pick the people who are supposed to go and compete worldwide. just bricklaying. If you can look at the speed at how people lay bricks internationally, you will be astounded. So people are just exposed in that. They take videos, they share around, but unfortunately, we don't necessarily place those people who are winners, but we give them enough coverage, in our media, so that the companies might be interested in those particular people to give them jobs when they finish. How many people have applied? Youth. Okay, it was the issue of that one was the issue of online registration. The statistics of online registration is that, if I can get from my colleagues, it's now about what, 50%? What percentage are we at now? Yeah, so we're above 50% of the people who are actually applying using online registration. We also help them, even if they come in their offices, and make sure that they can actually do it. The backlog, it's something we've worked on. Every EXCO meeting, every 2 weeks, there is a backlog report, so that's how we're keeping the backlog down, make sure that it doesn't creep back to us again. The 450 million to be spent on in the new project assessment fee, we are busy doing criteria and strategies of how and where it will be spent. You must remember that it's not the past, it's actually the future. So we are really putting documents, because we want to make sure that there's equity in terms of the provinces, how we actually spend it. There should be equity between youth, women, and disabled people going forward. There was an issue about record-keeping deficiencies. I think those are probably related to the audit as well. Now, one of the things the detail which I didn't go on the whilst I was doing the presentation is that in 2019, we're using a different system of accounting. I think we're using Pastel. And then when we then implemented our ERP, we had to migrate into the new ERP system. So it created a lot of problems in terms of the records, from the other system to the new system. So that's one of the things which created problem in getting things in time for the audit. But it should be better as we go forward. Senior positions, we've talked about it. Online, we've talked about it, but there's a concern about rural people. How do they go online? Now, you must remember that we still have our offices for those people who do not have online tools to register, so they can still come to our offices. But even if they come to our offices, what we try and do is to train them also to be able to do them online. So that's how we deal with those people. Now, the issue of disabilities, I think I haven't dealt with it fairly, because it's been raised a couple of times in terms of people with disability in construction. Now, currently, the industry monitor, we don't have statistics of people in construction. The challenge is that the nature of construction itself, it doesn't lay itself well for people with disabilities. What in fact should probably happen is that when we register professionals, you'll find that probably we will have much more people in that area, because those are not most of those positions are office bound, not really going to sites, because depending on your disability, you might have challenges when you are actually at site. But there might be other minor people who are employed with minor disabilities, but they are not tracked, because when we talk about disabilities, we try and have more obvious disabilities. But I'm saying that with the register of professionals, probably that's when we will get those going up. Now, the other one is the issue of retentions and guarantees. Now, CIDB works a little bit differently than who's building houses again? NHBRC, yeah, NHBRC. Now, NHBRC, they really look at guarantees and workmanship, and they have a fund which they keep. But CIDB don't have those funds. Those funds are between the contractor as well as the client. So it's regulated between those two. We don't have, the Act does not allow us to have any direct access. Yeah. But what we do is we give guidelines, and also if there are disputes, we are called in to help with the disputes. Yeah. Now the other one, the disabilities I dealt with, and then the decrease in women's statistics, and what is CIDB doing about it. As I've indicated, CIDB work in partnership with client departments who should spend money in women-owned construction companies. Now, unfortunately, women always have this double jeopardy that they are discriminated by their white counterparts as well as their black male counterparts. So we need to have, the client departments who are spending money need to have deliberate programs where they will say, I know that from a treasury point of view, there are always debates, but I think they must have targets that we will be spending this budget on women-owned construction companies, and then they should then be able to then achieve results if they do so. But if they don't have those deliberate programs, it becomes a problem. In our recent workshop with Epwp women, they were saying that the departments don't necessarily have targeted programs where they will give women. So that is really what we need to drive, and hoping that the ministry will actually drive it, and the portfolio committees or the committees of parliament will also make sure that they monitor those. Now, in terms of rural academic institutions who empower women, one, the research, the partnership we have now is with the University of Johannesburg, but we hope to have other partnerships as we go along with various institutions. Now, with engineering institutions, there are far and few in between who are historically black universities. Walter Sisulu University, it has an engineering program, and we would in future look at them. The University of Zululand is starting a program of engineering this year, so it's actually too early, but we will be looking at those institutions to partner with them, and also make sure that they promote women in construction as they go along. Key positions we've talked about. And then from the chair, there was an issue of how do we really sort of embrace the district development model as we go forward. Now, what we do, especially with municipalities, we have a target in our APP, which is capacitation. And one of those things is IDMS, Infrastructure Development Management System, which helps the municipalities, district municipalities, local municipalities, of how to implement project effectively, successfully, and efficiently. So that is actually what we do. And we also make sure that, in terms of applying uniform policies, we help them, because that is another area where they usually struggle in terms of the interpretation of the policies which are there, and applying them uniformly. We actually do that. Now, the issue of transformation also it's raised, it's had there, that in higher grades you have got fewer black-owned companies. As I say, how do you develop a grade 9? If you want to develop a grade 9, you go to a black-owned grade 9, you go to a black-owned grade 8, and make sure that they have access to work. They also have training. That is actually now where CIDB comes in to say that what type of development those people do. So if the client departments spend their money by giving those people some projects, and we also then spend in terms of the frameworks, the development frameworks with those people, then you actually do that. But if client departments as a basis do not spend their money either in black construction companies or women-owned companies or youth-owned companies or disabled companies, the movement is not going to happen. So we must actually stress that. In Northern Cape, the issue of grade 9, for instance, that they don't have a grade 9, is because of the economic activity. You find that in those areas, you would find a grade 9 project after every 3 years. So what happens then is that a company is not going to stay in Northern Cape. What they will do is that they will relocate they will place themselves in Johannesburg, for instance, or in Bloemfontein, where they will be getting grade 9 projects. But when there is a project, that once-off projects in Northern Cape, they go there. So that one is an economic structural problem rather than anything. But if you can get a lot of development in the work in the Northern Cape, you will find that there will be a person who will go there and be resident there in the province. Now, lastly, we were asked, about general cases of which we actually get from clients. We did share some information last year of defaulters, what we have done to different defaulters. But the bulk, if you look, okay, now when it comes to cases, what we must remember is that both the clients as well as contractors must abide with CIDB prescripts. So in other words, we can find the clients, we can also find the contractors. But clients, they do default now and then. They don't follow certain rules, and we find them. But most of the people who default are contractors. Now, if you look at the bulk of defaults, it's actually submission of false documentation. Now, it's been a very, very big problem to submit false documentation. Now, as part of online registration, that's what we want to solve that problem. Because online registration, you don't submit a document, but what we do is that we go through the system, of Treasury. We sort of check certain documentation, whether it's there. So if we are looking at the tax, your tax compliance, we're not going to take a paper from you, which is forged. We go to the system, and the system interrogates Treasury, and it says, you are not tax compliant. So false documentation of any kind is a big problem. And then the approach of actually being online, it makes us make sure that we go to CICP, we get your status there, and then we can do things accordingly. Now, if you look at CIPC, for instance, they now, if you want to renew your company, before you could just renew your company without submitting your annual financial statement. But now they are forcing that renewal that you actually upload your financial statements. So one of the biggest forged documents is annual financial statements, where people lie about the financial statement. So with this approach of CIPC, we will now have a capability, you know, when we agree with them, to actually say that when a person applies, instead of giving us the financial statements, we go to CICP because those are official. We download them. We say, no, your income for the year was this because you submitted it. You know? So false statements are a problem. Now the other parts also which are made, which is a lot which we do, is SIU referrals. You know, when SIU is doing work investigating in different provinces, municipalities, etc., there are lots of things which they come to CIDB for, which we must verify for them, and then we'll verify those things whether they are true or false, you know, etc., etc. Right. I hope I have answered all the questions. Unfortunately I haven't been looking at the chat because I know that while I was presenting, probably there should have been some things on the chat. So maybe that's where we will maybe start for. Let me.
Thank you.
Can you please send us a list of the contractors that Ms. Cornette is referring to? Okay. Last year there was a list where there was a request to say that who have violated the CIDB prescripts and what we have done with it, and then we did provide that. Okay, right. All right, Chair. Thank you very much. Those are the answers I've given. I hope that many people have been answered.
Thank you, CEO, for that comprehensive response. Dear?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, once more. And
my apology, DM. Did you get anything from Apleni?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes.
Yes, let me read it quickly. The question reads as follows. The issue of women, Black and youth ownership is very disappointing. I don't think that COVID should be used as a scapegoat in this regard. We're talking 27 years since the dawn of democracy. I can't be that we will hide behind COVID, which is less than a year. A radical approach is needed in this regard. The ownership in the industry must indicate the demographics of our country. Another key issue is the issue of awareness of opportunities in the industry for women and young people in the rural areas. There's no indication of the clear program by the department to make young people aware of the opportunity within the department and equip them to be able to compete with the well-established companies who mostly owned by white males. It's high time that we stop creating unnecessary excuses which bear our people from developing. Thanks, Chairperson. That was the input from Honorable Apley.
GM, you are on the podium. I wanted to check whether would you refer it to the CEO or the DM would what you
no, that's a political one, Chair.
Yes.
I will take it. Because that's our mandate. When we talk improving the quality of life of citizens and freeing the potential of each person, that includes women who have not been exposed to these opportunities in the past, who have not even been there. And thanks to our democratic dispensation that has opened those opportunities for women to own construction companies. As there was even a picture in the presentation which was indicating our resolve to empower women. All the kind of different strategies that we are applying in order to improve the participation of women in the industry. But also that goes with empowerment, women themselves taking interest in this kind of industry, because it is not uncommon to find that women themselves, when they have to participate, when they get the opportunity, you find some reluctance. But I think here, when we talk ownership, the meeting I held with all our entities yesterday, we were very emphatic in saying, as they work together as entities, because you will find that the professionals are registered by CBE, which is the Council for the Built Environment, the various professions that they participate, the councils that they participate in under CBE. We had a kind of joint meeting yesterday of our entities and our councils to say, as we graduate, as we produce these professionals, we must also monitor the companies that do shoddy work. Who owns them? Is it people who are qualified in the field of construction? Or is it just people who happen to have an opportunity to register? As Mr. Kamete was reflecting earlier on, that everybody, once they register a company, they then register a construction company, but you may find that the expertise in the ownership of the company, the expertise of the industry lacks. It's just people the one who own the construction company are not necessarily qualified in the field. And we were then saying yesterday, we must go deeper in analyzing the composition of those companies, the list that was referred to earlier, those companies that violate the CIDB rules, those companies that continue to produce shoddy work. Let's analyze further to determine, are they owned by professionals in the construction industry or by just ordinary citizens? Because that analysis will help us in the process that we are busy with now, the legislative process that was asked earlier. The review of the CIDB bill is with the drafters. From the drafters, it will go to the state law advisors, and from the state law advisors back to the ministry, so that we take the process forward. But there is close scrutiny in terms of the legal review, because we feel there are a number of impediments in terms of how we should be progressing in this field. So the radical expectations, we're trying to remove those obstacles that hinder realization of this radical change. So the legal process is at that point, and we are working, trying to harness our bodies, because truly they can't work each in isolation of the other, because their work somehow goes and connects somewhere. And therefore, in the pipeline of the infrastructure investment also, we talk of them contributing there. We have also made strong the point that ISA must be part of these engagements with our entities, because what Mr. Gamede is saying, that as CIDB, they don't give out contracts. They merely regulate contractors. The work is done, the actual transformational work is done at a department level, where he and she who issues out the tender to build this and to build that. That's really where the crux of the matter should be. Whilst we address and strengthening regulation on this hand, but we also need vigilance and agility on the part of departments to ensure that we change this picture. But we were also saying that private sector cannot be left unattended here, because also our entities tend to think and to work as if they are to regulate government, and yet they are to regulate the industry, and the industry includes private players in the game. There are private contractors who do business, a private company with another private company. So it can't be as if it is only government that must produce these results. It means we also have to strengthen our monitoring arm on private companies in terms of their own performance. My last point, Chair, would be on the fact that with DDM, on your point, we agreed yesterday with all our entities, again, CIDB included, that in as much as they have been visible in provinces, we now need them to be visible per district in those provinces, not necessarily and only to have a limited footprint. They may structure this depending on their size in each of the provinces. There are a lot of ways that they could employ, but ensuring that in each of the district development meetings that take place, they are represented, they participate meaningfully, because that is where they are also going to see the impact of what they do as entities on the general populace of our people. So that also is what we agreed upon yesterday. Yes, this report is an annual report of 1920, and COVID, only the lockdown started in March 2020. And therefore, that was at the end of this financial year. It is, we have raised it even before, but CIDB has been adamant that some of their measurements that they would have done, because the financial year ends at the end of March, they would not have been able to measure during that lockdown. And therefore that retarded their processes of consolidating their reporting information. So I thought I needed to clarify that, because those are issues that we also get seized with as we monitor their work. Either than that, Chair, I'm not sure if what is on the chat. It looks like it's just a comment, not a question, which I appreciate. But we really need to this thing of now my Northern Cape kicks in, the Dunaderang, the working together of our entities becomes critical, in as much as it is the CIDB that is accounting now, but its work has an impact on the department, various departments, on other entities. So we do have collaborative forums, which we reported last year. They are working well. That's probably why we're also seeing the kind of change. Because if you recall, our performance was quite bad with respect to women and youth in the last. We couldn't even report. And these are the systems and the tools that the minister has referred to, that we need systems that help us monitor the work that we do, strengthen it. And for us to do that, we must strengthen our IT capacity, and we must strengthen our business model. So those are the steps, Chair, that we are taking moving forward. I thank you, Chair, for your time.
Thank you, DM, for the comprehensive response on issues and questions that were raised by honourable members. Indeed, as the committee, we are comfortable with the performance of the entity as articulated, particularly with regard to the number of areas. Amongst the issues raised was the work that has been done around the construction registers services, the number that were raised by the end of March, which indicated 56,653 contractors on the register. But more than that, context given, an explanation given to the downgrading moratorium, the rationale behind, but also the clarity given in terms of the work done around grading and classes, but more than that, the revision around the tender value indicated, and priorities given in terms of the register of contractors, the criteria that is used for the assessment, which is quite important, and the work that is that is done around identified district, around transformation, particularly with regard to the targeted groups. I think what is key is to appreciate progress that we are making, but also challenges that are raised, and also the commitment on the part of the CIDB together with stakeholders to accelerate the transformation agenda. But also what allay our fears is to know that indeed where there is an non-compliance, there is also a targeted approach to deal with that. The investigations that you have indicated, the cases that you have handled. I think what is quite important is the commitment to deal with those programmatic areas under administration, under the regulation and advocacy, the commitment to capacitate and develop the entity so that it is able then to achieve and reach its targets, and also the work done around issues raised by the Auditor General, the commitment to address those findings through the audit action plan. And we are looking forward to continuously engaging with the entity, particularly around the issue of transformation and compliance. And with those few reflection, let me then express my gratitude to the team led by the Deputy Minister and also the chairperson and the CEO. Let us express our appreciation for the work done, for the honoring of the appointment to come and make a reflection in terms of performance and progress that you are making in implementing the annual performance plan. You are free to log out DM. We just need to finalize some few in-house issues. Thank you, DM and the team.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, Honorable Members. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep well, and God bless.
Malbonga, DM. Bye-bye.
Honorable Members, the outstanding issue is the issue of the minutes. Can we request the members just to make a reflection on those minutes and see as to whether...
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
So, Chair, before we go there, I just wanted to raise the issue after the DM and her team left, is that, you know, we are governed by the rules of the House in these committees as well. And I do understand that heckling is generally frowned upon if it's not productive. And sometimes people don't like comments in the chat section. But the two comments I made were a question to Hlupeka, and then also thanking the Deputy Minister for one of her remarks. And then suddenly the chat was disabled, Chair. I'm not sure who took it upon themselves to disable the chat, but unless somebody is misbehaving in the chat, I don't see why it needs to be disabled. And I just think that that's infringing our rights to engage, Chair. And I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you, team. I think I will engage with the committee secretary on that, just to get a sense in terms of what could have happened. I've seen the appreciation that you made to the minister, and I did not notice when it was disabled. But it's a matter that I will make a follow up with the committee secretary and the administrative team. Just to get a sense what happened, but let's get back to the minutes. Is the attendance register in order, honorable members? Is there anyone that we might have missed? Let's then go to the next part of the minutes. Those are just the tests that we had from the Department of Transport. The thrust of the minutes is centered around the presentation of the Department of Transport on its annual report. The first part deals with the comments that the minister made in his opening remarks. Can you go up? Those are the issues that the minister raised. And then the Director General has presented the key areas raised, and then comments by honorable members. Let's just probably get a sense in terms of the comments raised by honorable members. Is there any correction, addition, submission that honorable members would want to make? Mindful of the fact that we had ample opportunity to the minutes. In the absence of that, can we then get a move of the adoption of the minutes, honorable members?
I so move, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Dango, for moving. Can we get a second? Sorry?
I second the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Khai, for seconding. And that brings us to the closure. Let me take this opportunity to indeed express my gratitude to the honorable members for attending this meeting, for ensuring that indeed we hold the executive accountable. We are able to ensure that the commitment that they made to the House is indeed implemented, and we are looking forward to have a fruitful year as we round up the current year under review, and we hope that members continue to stay home, to stay safe. It is important that at all times, let us be vigilant. Let us be extraordinarily cautious in terms of this pandemic. Honorable members, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Fly safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm tired.
Let's meet on Tuesday.
Bye-bye,
Okay, but I'm
everybody.
missing you. I'm missing you, my colleagues. I want you back.
I miss you too.
Miss you too, honorable team.
Goodbye. God bless.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I was worried, Chair, because we do have load shedding now.
Oh.
But
I hope that load shedding did not disable the chart.
No, it's not me. I don't know what happened. It's not me.
All right, you'll investigate and then probably give us a feedback in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.